Welcome to EPG Pathshala. My name is Dugirala Vasanta. I am on the teaching faculty of the Department of Linguistics at Osmania University, Hyderabad. This is course 10, Psychoneurolinguistics. Today's lecture is on module 18, Neurolinguistics part of the course. The topic is brain structures and language functions. The main objective of this lecture is to discuss some of the brain structures and their role in different language functions such as speaking, listening, reading and writing. The spinal cord is not described in greater detail in this lecture because it does not play a direct role in processing or production of language. Let us look at the brain starting from the outermost layer, which is called cortex. I will show you two pictures. The next two screens will have pictures of brain, the outer layer of brain. So this is how the outer surface of brain looks. The next picture shows the right and the left hemisphere are pulled apart. They are connected by corpus callosum. So see the corpus callosum. Let me describe these two pictures. The outermost layer of the two hemispheres is composed of grey matter. Okay? The bumpy things are called gyri. In singular you can say gyrus, and the indentations or cuts are called sulci or sulcus. So when you see the brain, and you can, when I have learned this course, we have shown the actual brain in a dish. You can see the gyri and sulci. They are important, they are very important because they mark the boundaries of different lobes. There are 4 lobes in each hemisphere. So it is using these gyri and sulci we try to say that the frontal lobe stops here, the parietal lobe, the temporal lobe, the occipital lobe. Okay. Now these gyri and sulci are protected from the hard skull with cerebrospinal fluid and meninges. You would have heard of meningitis, infection of the meninges. So they are like buffers, between the skull and the actual cranium. You have cerebrospinal fluid and meninges. So both the hemispheres, as you saw in the picture, are connected with corpus callosum. Right and the left are connected with corpus callosum. Now the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere process information in somewhat different manners. That is, the cognitive styles, information processing styles of the two hemispheres are different. As you can see on the screen, the left hemisphere is in color green and the right is in color blue. Left hemisphere processes information, it pays more attention to analytical information, logical, precise, repetitive, organized, scientific, literal, sequential. These are the styles of processing information by the left hemisphere, which is supposedly dominant in majority of the people. The right hemisphere, on the other hand, is creative, imaginative, intuitive, conceptual. It looks at holistic, big picture, and heuristic, empathetic, figurative, irregular. So the styles are different, and therefore they dominate different functions, different cognitive functions. So that information processing styles being different, the left side of the brain is good at managing, it processes information logically and sequentially, and therefore is involved in language processing. So in listening, reading, speaking, writing, we are manipulating symbols. So left hemisphere is very good at language, managing language. That is the firm belief in neurolinguistics. The right side of the brain, on the other hand, the right hemisphere, is more visually oriented. It helps us locate objects in the space, solve picture puzzles, appreciate art, music, recognize objects by touch. If suppose you close your eyes and I put a small chalk piece in your hand, or a pencil or a eraser, you can still recognize it. You don't have to see it. You are able to do that because your right hemisphere is helping you to do that. So recognizing objects to touch, for instance, is called stereognosis. So if there are lesions in the right hemisphere, you lose that ability. That's how they have established that right hemisphere is good at visuospatial abilities, whereas left hemisphere is good at language and mathematics and science and things like that. In addition to this sharing of cognitive functions by the right and the left and the left hemisphere also control the body in a contralateral way. As you can see from the picture on the screen, the right hemisphere controls the left side of the body and the left hemisphere controls the right side of the body. The reason for this is the white fiber tracts which come down to carrying information from the brain to the body, they cross over. 80% of the fibers cross over at the level of medulla. 20% goes straight. But because 80% crossover, the physically the right side of the brain controls the left side of the body and vice versa. You might want to know what is the evidence for this kind of functional specialization of the two hemispheres. Over the century, a lot of evidence was accumulated, starting with behavioral studies like dichotic listening. You will learn in detail about each of these in the other modules of neurolinguistics, but basically what dichotic listening test does is, when you give simultaneously two different words to both the ears and you ask people to report what they heard, they tend to report more words given to the right ear because right ear words go to left hemisphere, and left hemisphere is known to be dominant in majority of the people. So the words which reach the left hemisphere get interpreted quickly, and therefore you get right ear advantage. So that is one evidence for saying that left hemisphere processes language much better than right hemisphere. Then of course you have a series of lesion studies that is for controlling epilepsy or certain other neurological conditions. Sometimes surgeons have to remove entire hemisphere or one lobe in a hemisphere. So they have studied patients like that to find out which hemisphere is good at what. Then they did whole lot of neuropsychological tests, electrical stimulation experiments, neuroimaging techniques, electrophysiological experiments. As I said that there is a whole module devoted to methods in neurolinguistics. You will get lot more information on each of these techniques. So I will not spend any more time explaining you these techniques. Instead, let us look at the outcome of brain mapping studies done through electrical stimulation. This was the work of a German neurologist called Brodmann. So primary sensory cortex located in the parietal lobe is given Brodmann area BA number 1, 2, 3. So sensory cortex is 1, 2, 3. Primary motor cortex located in the frontal lobe is Brodmann area number 4. Primary visual cortex located in occipital lobe is Brodmann area number 17. Primary auditory cortex located in the temporal lobe is Brodmann area number 41. Wernicke's area is BA 22. Broca's area is BA 44. Angular gyrus and supramarginal gyri, which play a very important role in reading and writing, are assigned number 39 and number 40. So you will see these Brodmann areas mapped on to the left hemisphere in the next picture on the screen. Study at your leisure. Look at the numbers which I have just described, and the location and the numbers, the correlation between those areas. So this is what is Brodmann areas. Another picture of left hemisphere is shown to you on the screen. You see now we are moving into each hemisphere has lobes, 4 lobes. As you can see in the picture, you have frontal lobe marked in blue, parietal lobe yellow, temporal lobe green, occipital lobe pink. You can see occipital lobe is the smallest of the 4 lobes. Let's now discuss a little bit about each lobe. Frontal lobe, as I think it was pointed out to you earlier, that it was discovered by Paul Broca and I mean the frontal lobe contains Broca's area, which was discovered by Paul Broca in 1861. It is supposed to control articulated speech, verbalized speech. So, damage to Broca's area in the frontal lobe can result in apraxia or inability to make voluntary speech movements. If the apraxia affects speech, it is called apraxia of speech. You have a whole module on apraxia, we will discuss that later, but damage to frontal lobe can result in apraxia of speech, where you cannot say something voluntarily. Automatically, when nobody is asking you, you can move your lips, you can say whatever you want, but when somebody asks you what is your name, or if it is not speech, if it is limb apraxia, you cannot make a fist if they ask you to make. So, voluntary movement is affected if there is a damage to frontal lobe. Frontal lobes in general are associated with reasoning, planning, movement of speech, movement involving including movements involved in speech, emotions, problem solving. All right. Move on to the next lobe, the parietal lobe. This lobe is responsible for recognizing objects through touch. I have also mentioned this earlier. It is called stereognosis, and visuospatial abilities. Parietal lobe is responsible for all our visuospatial abilities, say reading maps, giving directions, all this. Parietal lobe coordinates movement, orientation, recognition of objects, perception, reading and writing. So, damage to left parietal lobe can result in what are known as ideational or ideomotor apraxia. You will learn more about that in the apraxia module. And also acalculia, that is inability to do simple mathematics. Let us move on to temporal lobe. Temporal lobe houses primary auditory cortex as well as Wernicke's area. Both are responsible for our ability to comprehend other people's speech. See, primary, when I am speaking now, you are listening, it will go to your primary auditory area and then passed on to Wernicke's area. Wernicke's area interprets the meaning of those sounds, both environmental sounds as well as speech. So, lesions to Wernicke's area can cause what are known as agnosias or inability to interpret the meaning of auditory stimuli, and when the damage is in the left lobe, it can cause what is known as pure word deafness. The smallest of the lobes, the occipital lobe, contains primary visual cortex, and it is responsible for processing all visual input coming from the body and from the environment. Damage to left occipital lobe can cause alexia, that is reading disturbance, or agraphia, writing impairment, color agnosia, inability to interpret colors, visual object agnosia, inability to recognize objects, all this. Okay, these are the four major lobes, but when you go further into below the lobes, we go into the midbrain, and then next to the below the midbrain you have pons, below the pons you have medulla. So, let me say a few lines about each of these structures. The nuclei of the third cranial nerve, oculomotor, fourth trochlear, part of the fifth trigeminal cranial nerves start from midbrain. In other words, midbrain is the origin of 3 or 4 cranial nerves, 3, 4 and 5. They originate at the midbrain level. There are red nucleus, substantia nigra, they are all located in midbrain. These are all different nuclei, they are like relay stations sending information back and forth. The nuclei of 6th cranial nerve called abducens, 7th facial, 8th auditory are located at the pons level. Then the medulla contains ascending and descending fiber tracts and the nuclei of 9th, 10th, 11th and 12th cranial nerves. It is at the level of medulla that 80% of the fiber tracts coming from cortex to spinal cord crossover. To observe the structures below the cortex, see the picture shown on the screen next. It is at the level of medulla that the fiber tracts cross over, making the brain control the opposite side of the body. On the screen you are shown some of these structures. See, you have midbrain, below that you have pons, below that you have medulla, medulla leading to spinal cord. The picture on the left side is magnified this side, so you can see at leisure, study the picture carefully. Now coming down to spinal cord, you can see there is a afferent sensory information going into the spinal cord, and motor information efferent. Afferent is sensory, efferent is motor. So information which is coming going from body to the brain go through the sensory tract. Signals coming from brain to the body go through the motor tract into our muscles. There is a dorsal horn and there is a ventral horn. Study the picture carefully later. Basically, spinal cord is a transmission link between brain and the body. It transmits motor impulses from motor cortex, which is there in the frontal lobe, to different organs, muscles, glands, and sends sensory information such as pain, touch, pressure, temperature from the body to the brain. The dorsal and the ventral roots join to become nerves. So 31 pairs of spinal nerves. You have seen the picture already in the previous module. Then aside from these structures, you also have what popularly known as small brain or cerebellum. Cerebellum or little brain, sometimes it is referred to as. It has connections to motor cortex in the frontal lobe. There is something called cerebrocerebellar tract. So that connects cerebellum to the motor cortex. Cerebellum controls fine motor movements, timing, motor memories, planning of movements, and our balance. So in connection with nuclei of basal ganglia, cerebellum is also involved in phonological processing of syllable sequences in words, all that. So you can have certain kind of dysarthria, cerebellar dysarthrias, cerebellar ataxias, and problems, language related problems, and therefore you need to know a little bit about cerebellum also. Now these are all the brain structures. What about the information flow happens to the fiber tracts? So the right and the left hemisphere, I only mentioned corpus callosum, which connects the right hemisphere and left hemisphere, but that's not the only connection. You have what are known as commissural fibers, which also connect the right hemisphere with the left hemisphere, projection fibers, which connect the cortex to the subcortical structures, some of which I have described a few minutes ago. Then association fibers, which connect one area of the cortex to another area in the same hemisphere. Okay, so commissural, projection, association fibers are three different kind of fiber tracts which allow this complete exchange of information between the right brain and the left brain. So we have talked about many brain structures and the fiber tracts which connect these structures, but all these structures, for them to function well and keep us conscious, alert, aware, and process information, brain requires blood. So let's talk about blood supply to the brain. The arterial blood supply to the brain is derived from two systems. One is called the carotid system, huge artery in the front, carotid artery, and there is a vertebrobasilar artery at the back of your neck. So from the back vertebrobasilar artery, from the front carotid arteries, they go up and they form what is known as circle of Willis. You will see in the figure in a minute on the screen. They form a circle of Willis. Circle of Willis is made up of three major arteries which cover the entire brain. So you only need to remember anterior cerebral artery or ACA, which supplies the corpus callosum, the basal ganglia, the medial part of the frontal lobe is supplied by anterior cerebral artery. Then you have middle cerebral artery, which supplies to motor, sensory and language areas in the frontal, temporal and parietal junctions. Notice I said frontal, temporal and parietal. These three areas, they are called pericerebral areas, is very important for language functions, and therefore it is middle cerebral artery is ruptured or something happens to middle cerebral artery, you get aphasia. So most people diagnosed with aphasia have problems with something to do with middle cerebral artery. What about posterior cerebral artery or PCA? This supplies blood to the occipital lobe at the base of the temporal lobe and the base of the temporal lobe. Okay. So you've seen ACA, that is anterior cerebral artery, MCA or the middle cerebral artery, or posterior cerebral artery, PCA. Together these three supply blood to the entire brain and they form a structure called circle of Willis. That picture I would like you to see on the screen next. Left side you are shown the circle of Willis, which is imposed on the actual brain diagram on the right side. Study the figure carefully. And then the next figure shows you the middle cerebral artery, how it supplies brain to the most important areas in the frontal lobe, in the temporal lobe and in the parietal lobe. And therefore, stroke aphasia, about which you are going to learn in another module, occurs when middle cerebral artery is damaged, not the PCA or ACA, but MCA, and MCA is shown in red color in this picture. Look at it carefully. Okay, so we have talked about brain structures, we have talked about fiber tracts which connect the brain structures, we talked about the blood supply. Assuming all this is going on well, then what are the structure function relationship? One of the earliest proposal about the brain structure and language function relationship is by Lichtheim and Geschwind's model. So you see in the figure on the screen, you have concepts which are managed in the association cortex, and you have motor word comprehension marked in a red block here, and auditory word comprehension in a green block. So you have what language basically involves turning our mentally stored conceptual information into speech motor movements. So you have one branch on the left side, so ventral prefrontal cortex is involved in that, or you take the auditory input which is going into the ear and you understand the meaning of it in the Wernicke's area, and then you comprehend what is intended by the speaker. So you have production and comprehension making up this kind of triangle like model. So what exactly happens during speaking and listening? What happens in the brain? Let me give you the steps. So these are the following actions take place. Information reaches, you are listening. When you are listening to speech, information reaches primary auditory cortex in the temporal lobe. Then Wernicke's area interprets the meaning of that, the auditory sensation. Then arcuate fasciculus transfer that information to the Broca's area. Broca's area passes on that information to motor cortex. Motor cortex sends signals to the body, say that open your mouth. Alright. So look at the figure on the screen. All these steps are explained with numbered. So first action is primary auditory cortex, second is Wernicke's area, third is the arcuate fasciculus, 4 is Broca's area, 5th is motor cortex, and from motor cortex fiber tracts come down to the spinal cord asking our speech muscles to move. This is what happens when you are speaking and listening. What about reading and writing? When you read a message, the first activity is from the eyes, the information go to the occipital lobe. From occipital lobe, the information gets to Wernicke's area, comprehension area, through angular and supramarginal gyri in the parietal lobe. That's why they are called reading and writing areas. So reading and writing involves occipital lobe, angular and supramarginal gyri in the parietal lobe, Wernicke's area, and after the Wernicke's area, it's the same process. Wernicke's area sends a signal to arcuate fasciculus to Broca's area. Broca's area contacts the motor area sends the signals to our speech muscles. I mean, now we are talking about reading and writing, right? So it sends signals to our hand to move. So we start moving our hand. So look at the figure on the screen to see supramarginal gyrus and angular gyrus and the other important areas which are involved in reading and writing. So once again, one more slide about language structure and language function. On the left side you see spoken word is interpreted in area 41 and in Wernicke's area, and then you hear and you comprehend that. So speaking and listening here. If it is written word processes, information goes to area number 17, which is in the visual cortex, the occipital lobe. Then it goes through areas 18 and 19, then area 39, which is angular gyrus, then Wernicke's area, then you start reading. Then the central part is called cognition. Other cognitive functions involve Wernicke's area, Broca's area, and then facial areas, and then cranial nerves, and then you start speaking. So these are some kind of diagrammatic way of explaining how structures and functions are interrelated. The brain and the spinal cord together make up the central nervous system, and in this lecture I have basically described brain and major structures in the brain, and I also talked about localizationist approach, which is supported by Brodmann areas. Different parts of the brain are mapped, they are given numbers saying that this area is in charge of this function, and that's what is a localizationist approach. So we looked at different major so-called language areas and the numbers associated with those areas. Then we talked about the differences in the information processing styles of right hemisphere and left hemisphere, and the mainstream notion which existed for a long time, almost a century, that it is left hemisphere which is primarily responsible for all language related functions, and that right hemisphere is a minor hemisphere as far as language is concerned. We have taken this mainstream, traditional notion, and we looked at different parts of the left hemisphere in relation to the the lobes, the 4 lobes we have examined in detail: frontal lobe, parietal lobe, temporal lobe, occipital lobe, and what are the major structures which contribute to reading, writing, listening, speaking across these 4 lobes, mainly the left hemisphere. Then in order to do these functions, brain requires sufficient blood supply. So I have also described the way the anterior cerebral artery, middle cerebral artery, and posterior cerebral artery cover the entire brain, take blood, and blood carries oxygen and supplies to the entire brain. But I drew your attention to middle cerebral artery, which supplies the so-called language areas near the sylvian sulcus. That is, middle cerebral artery supplies blood to the frontal lobe, Broca's area, the temporal lobe, which contains primary auditory area and the Wernicke's area, and the parietal lobe. So it is middle cerebral artery, which I said is very important, because later when you learn about aphasias, you know that it is a damage to middle cerebral artery which causes aphasia. And later on I have also talked about how these different structures of the brain participate in what exactly happens when we are listening to speech. What is the first step that the information reaches primary auditory cortex, and then it goes into the Wernicke's area where meaning is interpreted, and then information is sent via arcuate fasciculus to Broca's area, and Broca's area sends signals to motor cortex sends signals to the speech muscles, and we start speaking. So this kind of actual actions that take place while listening and speaking as opposed to reading and writing, I have explained in this module. If you have any doubts, consult the e-text. Thank you.